Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third session of Kids Programming Edition. And so, in today's session, I'm planning to talk about how we can use modules in Python and also work on list data structure, which is very useful for especially for when it comes to development of games. Now, when it comes to modularization, main thing now from the previous sessions, we learn how to use functions, which will be, you can reuse them, you can simplify your program. But when you want to develop program, you have to write a lot of functions. You don't have to write in your own. That means there are already developed set of functions you can already use. They are available as modules. So when it comes to functions available in use, you can call the module using Python keyword called import, and then the functions are readily available for you to use your program. So there are a number of modules available in Python. So in our first module, we look at how to use, for example, math module, and we talk about the functionality, right? Now, when it comes to getting use of modules, there are several ways that you can incorporate a module and use of functions. Although we have already used some Turtle module, we have not discussed in details. Now, let's say the simplest usage of module is you can say import math, which means that you are going to make use of math module available. So when you say import math, and then all the functions within the math module is available for you to use in your program. But remember, for each function, you have to use the module name, which means, for example, if you want to calculate the square root of 2, so we have to say math dot square root, and then you can type the name. So you type the number, right? Sometimes this is not best way to do this because you are going to, available all the functions together. So maybe if you want to use let's say one particular function, then the best thing would be we can say the second method of, calling functions within a module. So the second method is we can say from math import square root function, which means you are going to actually make available only this function. So because of this reason, you don't have to actually make use of the function module name. You can directly use the function name. So these are the two ways. Then sometimes when we use our first technique, remember, always you have to type your module name. So when you have that situation, we can better use the keyword for renaming. This is the as keyword. So for example, in this particular example, what you see is import math as m, and then m dot square root. So that means from this point onwards, the math module we can refer as m. This is actually common usage. So remember that this is one way to accessing this. Now, let's try some examples with the programming environment. Okay, so let's start with our programming environment. Now, as I told you earlier, now let me use directly if you type square root of function, right, like this. Python doesn't know that there's a function called square root, and you get an error message. So that's why we have to first, since there are no function, either you have to define it. Now in this case, we are going to make use of from the existing module. So the command is, we have to say import math, which means we are going to make use of math module. And then we can say, okay, math dot square root of function. So now whenever you pass 2, we'll get the square root of the number 2. It's available, right? Now, if you want to know like what functions are there, of course, you can try to use the help function, and you can type help math, which will give you what functionality available in math module. So I'll go back to where all the functions here. So it will list all the functions available and what is there. So sometimes this is not good way to access all the functions available. Let's say I want to know exactly how to use square root of function. So then we can type help, and then we can say math dot square root, which gives you exactly the square root function. So it says in this particular case square root, and return the square root of x, right? Now, so now we know how to make use of math. The second one is, I told you, like direct use, and which is what we have used in, for example, in our turtle graphics, right? Now, for example, the second technique is we can say math, import, and then square root of. So now what happens, you can directly call the function. You can just say square like this, right? Both ways are possible. Now in our previous turtle graphics, what we do, we say from turtle import everything. We put a star, which means we can make use of all the functions. Then the next one is we can make use of, for example, we can say import, math as m, and then we can say m dot square. We can get the square root of 2 like this. Right. Going back to some standard function. So I have listed some commonly used functions: finding square root of a number, getting a logarithm of a number in natural base and in the base 10, getting some trigonometric function like sine, cos, tan. And then there are functions available for the conversion, because all the functions, the trigonometric functions here, they assume that they are degrees in radians, but when you want to use it in degrees, we need to have conversion functions. We have degrees and radians. Then we have seal, flow, return x raised to the power y, we say POW. And you can even use mathematical constants like pi. Now, the other one I just want to show you is now the constant value. For example, math.pi. So sometimes when you want to calculate, let's say, area of a circle, we need use of mathematically equation, the pi value. We can use math.pi. Right. Another important module is random module. I mean, especially you know that whenever, let's say, we are learning game programming, way of learning programming, and most of the time we need to use random numbers. So there's a module called random which we can use. So we can use import random, and now we know that we can use a function available in the random. I'm going to use one of the function which is called randy, which can generate the random numbers. So for example, we can say, okay, um, random dot rand int, and then we can, let's say, 1, 10, and you can see it will generate a random integer value between 1 and 10, including both A and B. Right. So if you rerun this, you can see every time we can get a random number, which is quite useful. Right. For example, now from the knowledge that we got so far, now you can think of random number guessing, which we can use this function to generate a random number, and then you can guess, right? So which I will give you as a homework for you, right? Just try this. We'll discuss the answer in the next session, where we will use, random guessing game, right? You can play around with this. It's very important. And this could be even used for us for generating simple graphics. Okay, so now, sorry, now let's look at how we can actually use generate a turtle graphic, which uses the random int, right? So let me start this by getting the turtle module. Now you understand we say from turtle, and then we say import everything, which is now all the functions you can directly usable here, right? So what we are going to do, let's use to create a square function, which will generate a square. So now you know for this, for creating a function called square, we can say def square. And I will put in here because I want to create the squares in different sizes. So I put a variable n here so that whenever I want to create a square, so I can change it. Now, for example, what we could do. So we know we are going to repeat this 4 times. So we can say I in range 4, which will run exactly 4 times. Within that, we can say forward and then whatever the value we are going to choose for the size of the square, and then we will say left 9. Right. I think this is not that difficult to understand. Now let's say I want to draw a square size of 100 pixels, or we can say square. We can just say 100. Now let me save this. So this is our program number 40. So I'm going to save it as program number 40. Let me save it. Right. Now, let me run this. When you run, okay, you see it will draw a square of size of, 100. But of course, you can change it. Now, let's say we will have, okay, 100. We will say square 150. Square, let's say 200. Now, let's try to run and observe the outcome. Right. Now, let's incorporate randomness here. Right? Now, by doing this use of randomness here, this may generate random size or random squares, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the random module. I can say import random. And then here, you can decide the size of this, right? So for example, I can say, okay, I will say random dot rand int. Then I have to provide a range that I prefer to have. Let's say I want to have it between like 10 to 100. So that means the size of the square could be between 10 to 100. For the time being, I will remove the last two. Now let's run and observe what will happen. So when you run it, okay, so there was a mistake. Yeah. So I forgot to put up another bracket, which is now complete. Yeah. So we don't know the size, but it should be between 10 to 100. Okay. Of course, you can actually copy paste this one. Let's say the second one, I will put between 100 to, let's say, 150. And the third one, let's say I'm going to have it between 150 to, let's say, 200, which I am going to mimic the same behavior like in previous, but it's random sizes now. So every time run, you might get, different shapes. So let me run it. Okay, so this is how it looks. Let me stop it. Let me run again. Cool, isn't it? The randoms gives you as the freedom to change the way we walk, right? So, so let's draw like, 10. Maybe we can use a for loop there. Okay. So I'll go back. Yes. So instead of putting this, let's have the same numbers. Of course, you can, use a range function to define that too. But in my case, let me say I'm going to use a for loop. And then I'm going to say it's I in range, let's say 10. So basically, I'm creating 10 squares, the random size squares. Okay, now everything looks fine. So let me run this so you can see how it runs. It'll generate 10 random squares. Okay, one more run. Looks cool, isn't it? Right. Now that we have looked at about the modules, we actually going to use Pi0 module. I will give you a brief introduction at the end today, but let's move forward. I want to discuss one more important part in today's session. So this part we are going to look at about the Python lists. Now, when we have several things you want to manipulate, or you want to keep several items under a single name, which is very useful, which you will see, we have to use Python lists. Right. Now, Python list is what we call one of the data structures available in Python. So you can use a set of items, or you can say a collection of items under a single variable name. So this will be easier the burden of generating multiple variables. If you are trying to give different namings, it might be difficult for us. But there are some properties you need to remember when you say list. So remember, lists are what we call ordered collection of items, right? So previously we said, okay, x equal 10, which we know that we assign 10 to variable x. Now, similarly, we are going to assign set of values. Now, when you're using set of values, we have to enclose using square bracket. So if you see a square bracket and multiple values assigned to a variable, so now you should know it's a list. When you create a list, you can manipulate, which means after you created the list, you can add, you can remove, you can search items. Therefore, we normally use, we say list is a mutable data type. Okay, now let's create a list using an example. So this time I'm going to create a set of numbers. So let's say create a list of numbers. So this is a commit. So I'm going to name it as number list. This is, we are going to assign several numbers into one single name. So for example, let's say we have several numbers. Let's say we have 11, our first number, 2, 23, 45, and let's say we have 50. Right. So now this will create a list in Python. So let's just print it. So print in the list is direct. You can simply print and you can say number list, which will print all the values within the list. So let me save this. This is our program number 15. So I'm going to save it as program 15. I'm going to save it. Right, now let me run this and you can see, right? So it will print exactly as it is. Now let's say you want to print each of the items in the list. You can use a for loop, right? So for example, Let's say you want to print each items, print each item in the list. Yeah, simple method to do this is we can say for I in, we can say number list. So what this means is the for loop can be used to read from a set of values. So each value, take it as a variable I. So when you want to print the item, you can simply say the print I. So what happens now, every time you run it, right, you take one item at a time and then you print it. So first it will take the first number and it will print it. And then you get the second number, then the third number, then the fourth number, then the fifth number. Okay. So let me run this. So when you say run, now you can see earlier we had a print statement that which will print the list, whole list. And the second one we have, for loop where you take one item at a time. So that's why you see 11, 2, 23, 45, and 15. Okay. Now, let's look at some more functions. Now, for example, if you want to get the length of the list, we can say, okay, length of the list. Simply, you can say print. I will say len number list. So this len function, what it does, it will calculate the number of items within this list and it will just print it out. So if you run it, now you see last one as 5, which means we have 5 items in the list. Okay, next one. Now, if you ask me like, how can we, access each value, right? Not that you are print like one after the other. Let's say you want to access specific value. We need to understand the order of this. So in Python list, we have something called index, which will define the order. And the index in Python start with 0. So we have 0 here, right? So this is called index. So the first value, we have index 0, then you have 1, then you have 2, then you have 3, then you have 4, which we call the index, right? So this is what we call the index. So using the index, what we could do, we can access which one you want to access it. Whatever you can access, you can do, right? Now, for example, we can run this. We actually create the list. For example, if you want to access the first item, we can say, okay, number list, and we can put 0, which will access the first one. Let's access the last one. Now we know that the index should be the 4, which we can say, okay, number list, we will put 4. Remember, sometimes this is confusing. If you say, okay, access the second item, it's not number list 2, it should be number list 1. Always, whatever the number that you want to access, minus 1. If the second item, then index is 1. Third item, index is 2, and so on. Right? I hope you get it. So the printing, for example, if you want to say, I want to print or access the first item. Now we know, let's use print together with this. We can say print number list, and it should start with 0. So let me run this. Now you can see number 11 is there. Okay, right. Now, there are a few things we can do. Let me discuss very briefly those as well. Now, for example, I told you once you create a list, you can change it, you can add new items. Now, let's look at how to add new items. Now, adding items, there are two techniques or two methods that we could use. The first one is we can add item to the end. So what happens, we can say, okay, uh, add item to the end of the list. So the technique or the method is we can say, okay, number list dot append. So append will add a number to the end. Let's say it's 29. Now let's try to print it just to check whether it has happened. So earlier we have 5 numbers, last number is 15, and now we are adding 29 to the end. If you run it and observe, now you can see the 29 is added to the end of the list. But let's say if you have a question like, okay, now if you want to add in the middle, okay, there's a way that we can do. The method is called insert. What insert method does, basically you can specify index where you want to keep your value or the number, right? And then you can put the index and the value. So let me discuss that. So let's say I want to add 20 as the right second item. So what do you have right now? You can go back. Okay, the second item is 2. I want to put 20 now. So the command is we can say, okay, number list dot add. First, we have to specify the index value. So second item means the first one is 0, the second one is 1, and the value that is 20. Right? Now we can print the number list. So if you run this, now, sorry, I did a mistake. It should be insert, not add. Sorry about that. Yes. Now you can see 20 is added as the second item. So that's what insert does. Now, if you're wondering like, how do you know these details? Always you can use help list. Just type help list, which will give you all the functions available under the list. You know, you can find out by going through this. That is possible, right? Or else, let's say, if you want to look at like how we may use insert, we can say list dot insert. Okay, it says we have index and the object. Insert the object before the index. Right. Okay. Let's move on to more details. Okay, let's say that I want to change the value of the item. Now, what we have? Okay, so we have 11, 22, 23, 45, 15, and 29. Let's say I want to change the second item. Right now we have 20. Let's make it 30. So it's easy because we have to say, okay, number list. Access in the second item means you can put index 1. So that gives us a 20. Simply, what you need to do, we can assign to different value, the value you want. If you want to store 30, so let's put 30 there. So by doing so, and by printing the number list, now you can observe the second item has changed to 30. Okay, let's add this to our program. So what we are going to do is we'll make it the second item. We'll change the second item as 30. So simply what we have to do is, first of all, we have to access the second item. The index is 1, and then we'll assign to the value we want. And let's print it. Okay, so when we run, now you can observe the 30, instead of 20, we replace with 30. Simply we change the second item to 20. Okay, few more to discuss. Next, I would like to discuss how we may sort the list. So the idea of this is, now if you look at the numbers, there's no order. So if you want to sort, the command is sort. So if you look at help list.sort, which will give you the details. Now, if you look at here, you can say self, and then we have reverse false. So sort the list according to the order, right? So if you just say sort, it'll make it ascending mode. Right, now let's check that. So let me run this. Okay, so let's first try in the command line. So we have said number list.sort. Right, this is how you use. And if you just try number list again, now you will see the numbers are ordered in the ascending. Right? Numbers are sorted in ascending order. So how do you make the descending order? So if you look at the help again, list.sort, there's a flag which we'll call reverse false now. So we'll make it true. It's a Boolean variable. So what we are going to do is, right, we can say, okay, number list dot sort, and we say reverse equals true. Early it was false, right? So now if you look at the number list, you can say that the numbers are sorted according to the descending order. Right? Okay, now let's add these two. So the first one is sort the list in ascending order. The command is, we can say number list dot sort, and you can use print number list. The second one is sort the list in descending order. So the command is, sorry, we have to say, okay, number list dot sort. We have to say reverse equals true. And then we can say print number list. Okay, now that we have done, we can run it. So now, sorry, reverse spellings. We have to say reverse. Okay, sorry. Run it. Yes. Now you can see last two. So this is what we have, and this is when you put in the ascending order, right? And this is in descending. Okay. Now, having said that, let's now discuss the last two. How do you remove item? So the removing item, we can use del. Now, for example, let's say I want to remove the first item, right? Based on the index, right? First item, that is 45, right? So command is, we can say del, and then we can say, okay, number list, which is 0. And now if you look at the number list, so the first value is good. Now this is one way to remove an item which based on the location of the item. Second one is you can remove based on the number, the value, but remember, when you have specified removing value with the number, if you have multiple values, it will remove the first occurrence. So in our case, it's unique, so you might not face the same situation. Let's try to remove, let's say 23. So the command is, we can say, okay, number list dot, we can say remove, we'll say 20. Again, when you try number list, now you see the second time we removed pair on the value. Right. I think with this, you get basic understanding of what we expected to do. Okay. Now let's try to do some examples just to understand the use of lists. Now the use of list in general in game development and also graphics is very important. So to illustrate that one, I'm going to use a new one, and then I'm going to start with creating a square again. So I hope by now you are very comfortable of writing a square. Now we can say, okay, so I'm going to say, okay, from turtle, import everything, and then def square. Let's take in as the argument. So I'm going to use a for loop for I in range 4. I'm going to repeat the following two statements 4 times. That is forwarding n times, and then also turn into the left 90 degrees. Okay, and then square 100. So let me save it. This is our program number 16. So we have program number 16. Let me save it. And now let me run this. Which will draw a square shape like this. Now, let me show you how we can use colors. Now, for example, if you want to draw in red color, so we can say, okay, color is red. And then we can say square 100, which you will get a red square, right? So let's have, for example, a blue circle, right? Sorry, square. So what we need to do is we can say, okay, color blue, okay, square 100. And if you run it, okay, of course, it'll, okay, red and blue in the same place. Let's shift it a bit. Okay, I'm going to shift. So after drawing the red circle, let me turn like 6 degrees. Hopefully now you can see both. Right. Now switching colors is very interesting. Now, the way we want to access is, let's say we have colors in whatever the colors we have, and it's in a list, we can iterate this to create graphics. Now, for example, let's say before we move on to this, so we have what we call colors. Let's say we have a list, and let's say we have red and blue. So this list contains two string values, but which is useful for us to do. Now, whenever you need the first color, right? So we have, say, colors, and let's say we have red and we have blue. It's a list, right? So whenever you can use 0, which will give you red, and COLOURS colors 1, right? You get blue. Now, what if you want to go, right? Which one you are going to use it every time when you want to run it, right? So there's a trick that we can actually use. We can get every time when we run, we have modules. Now, let's say you want to iterate this with a for loop. Now, when you want to iterate with the for loop, the loop start with 0, 1, and so on. So when you have 0, right, that will give you a red color, right? If you divide by the number of colors, it's like this: 0, you divide by the number of colors, that is 2, will give you 0. 0, so then you get 1. And if you're going to be divide by the number of colors, you get 1. Then you get 2. And divide by the number of colors, you get 0. So you see the colors can be switched now every time with the index. So the trick that we are trying to use is, right, every time when we get in a loop, we can take the different colors. So the loop is like this. Let's say I'm going to repeat this for 5 times. Let's say range 5. I'm going to repeat this 5 times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print my colors, right? But I'm not going to type red or blue. What I need is I need red, blue like this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get that integer value I, and then we will get modulo or getting the remainder, and I will say or length of the colors, right? By doing so, you can change the way you want. So if you do like this, okay, I made a mistake. Okay, I miss in here. Right, sorry about that. Now you can see it will say red, blue, red, and so. So you got the trick here, right? So let me put up the trick there, just so that you can switch the color of the squares. Right, now what I'm going to do here, instead of just putting this, I'm going to have only one, right? The color I'm going to switch. So for example, I will say for I in, let's say, range 5, that is what we did. And then we have a square 100 and left 6. But before that, let's choose the colors. the command that I'm going to use is color. What I need is red and blue, right? So what I'm going to say, okay, colors. I will take the variable I. We get the modulo with the length of colors, right? So now what happens when you run it? Okay, same error, sorry, for I in range. So let me run. Okay, we have not defined colors. That's also my mistake. So let's define the colors. So we say we have red and we have. So now you can see this will draw red, blue, 5 times. Of course, if you want to go for whole circle, which will draw very interesting graphic. So what you need to do is every time it will turn 6 degrees. So the whole circle is 360, which means we have to repeat 60 times. So let me put 60 and let me run this. So now you can see how the list could be used. Sometimes we need to, in this particular case, we are drawing some graphics and we are switching. Actually, adding a one color is not an issue because you can just put whatever the colors you want to and they will take in turn, right? So this is a little bit slow. Let me make a little bit faster. So you can make it faster by putting the function speed and 0, you can check. The 0 is the fastest one. So you can see. Right. Now, for example, adding another color would gives you the colors in turn. For example, let's put the green color. So what I need to do is I can just go there, right? And then I can put a comma and then I will say green, which will change and make it to a, now 3 colors. Of course, you can make it more interesting instead of putting, the colors like this. What we can do is maybe you can fill the colors, right? Now, what we did here is we draw this. So let me close. So let me make it a copy. I'm going to get a new one. And let me copy from here. I'm just going to change the same code, but make sure I'm going to save it separately. Now let me save. This time I'm going to use program number 17. Right. I'm going to save it. Now that we have different colors, let's fill these colors instead of just drawing this. So what you can do is we can say begin fill and then we can end fill. So we can say begin fill and then end fill. What those two does, those two, you can use it to fill the square with different colors. So let me run this. So hopefully, yes, now you can see it's very common. Okay, it's very interesting now. We have seen how the color variation comes in. So the next thing that we could actually do is we can incorporate randomness here, right? Now, for example, let's put up the different sizes. Instead of just say square 100, maybe we can use randomness. So I'm going to say, okay, import random in the code. And inside here, instead of 100, let's put up random now and see what happens. So I'm going to say random dot rand int. So we specify the interval, let's say 10 to 100. Yeah, which will give you very interesting figures. So you can see, you have, see how it look like. So you can change the colors, you can experiment different shapes. And maybe share your graphic with us, right? Just play around with the commands that we have actually learned. So very interesting, isn't it? So one last thing I would like to discuss before we actually going to use, right, the game structure, which is we should know how the coordinate system works and XY coordination works. So which I will discuss with the Pi0. Since I want to do it interactively, so I will stop with this point, and then I will share the note so that you can practice and you are ready to start our journey with the program with Pi0. Now everything is settled, and with this, actually, we complete all the basic Python, the commands that you need to get ready with the part 2. So those who have even missed, those who have participated, you know that in our whole session, we actually went through this. We did a lot of exercises, but I think those who are starting, if you go through this very carefully, actually we covered everything that you need to start. So I hope to meet you on this Sunday with Pygame0 interface and start developing simple a game. We will discuss how we can actually start creating a game structure, game strategy, and creating pirates, like if you have done Scratch, for example. So how this could be done in Pi0, and what are the advantages you might get in developing in Python. You have more flexibility than what you will get sometimes in other programming environment. Okay, guys, with that said, I would like to stop and hope to see you on this Sunday. Okay, remember, there was a homework that you want to do. Is a number guessing game. Use our random module that we have discussed today, which will generate a random number, and develop a small Python coding to make the guessing. Okay, good luck, guys, and let's meet on this side. Thank you.